Yes, salam alaikum. Good morning, everyone. I am here. Apologies for coming in late. My network was giving me issues. That's a very good question. So, AI, or artificial intelligence, is the ability of a machine, in this case a computer, to perform tasks that would typically require human intelligence. So, anything that requires learning, reasoning, problem solving, understanding a language, or recognizing patterns. These are usually things that only the human brain is able to do. So AI is about creating a system, a algorithmic system that can think, that is, it can reason and make decisions. It can learn, which means it can improve from experience, and it can adapt, which means it can handle new situations. And more recent AI models have also been designed with the ability to mimic, that is, to copy human abilities to a certain extent. Things like hearing, or seeing, or moving, or speaking. A good example is ChatGPT's voice function. They have updated the model such that every you can speak to it using your own voice, and it will reply you as though it understands you with its own computer generated voice. So there are different types of AI. Some are simple. Even a spam filter in your email is a type of AI. But there are more complex models like ChatGPT, or self-driving cars like Tesla is also an example of an AI model. So there are different types, and there are complex types, and there are simple types. It's interesting to know that AI is something that we've actually been using for a very long time. It's just that it has now become much more powerful, a much more powerful technology. And so it has the ability and the possibility of changing the way that we do things in the modern age. Okay, so again, fantastic question. The truth is, if used properly, artificial intelligence can be a game changer for all of northern Nigeria. I'll give a few examples. In agriculture, we can use AI to help farmers predict weather patterns. One of the issues that a lot of farmers go through is that they aren't sure of the seasons. So, how many days of sun are we going to get versus how many days of rain are we going to get? That is something that an AI model, if you give it enough weather data, is going to be able to predict over several months. And now, if you have the ability to predict, to know what the weather is going to be in a certain geographical location over a period of time, it's going to help you make better decisions as to how to plant your crops, when to plant them, when the harvesting season is going to be, and that means you can have better yield. You can also use it to detect crop diseases much earlier, which can boost food production and reduce the amount of loss. In education, there are already several AI powered apps that offer personalized learning in Hausa or English or in other languages, even if it's offline, which can help bridge gaps where there aren't enough teachers, especially in rural areas. There is a AI app currently being used in over 2,000 schools in northern Nigeria, Curry AI, put together by Abdullahi Baturi. What it does is that it helps teachers create curriculums based on the needs of individual students. And we might think that that's a small thing or that's an easy thing, but I will tell you that one of the hardest jobs for teachers and the thing that takes up most of their time is being able to create the correct curriculum for their students. But AI is so advanced that you can create a curricula not just for several students that you're working with, but even for individual students, so that the lesson or the curricula can be tailored to the need of that student. Some students learn very quickly, others have others are visual learners. They need examples before they can understand the subject matter. AI can do that for every student. For students that only need to read to understand, it can give them enough information. For those that need visual aids, it can create graphs, it can link them to videos. For those of them that need audio cues, it can do that as well. So it's a very useful tool in the education journey. In healthcare, AI has already been used to diagnose diseases from a simple single blood sample or simple blood image. There is a program, for example, that can detect malaria just by looking at the picture of a single blood sample. It can detect whether or not that blood is infected with malaria. And if you think about the different ways in which AI is able to arrange information, it can make it much easier to manage medical health records. So that if you're a patient that is coming into one hospital and you're being referred to a different clinic or a different hospital, you don't need to go there and start all over again with your records. You just need to move the information from one hospital to another, and the AI would have already collected the data that the medical professional needs. It's also being used in banking and financial inclusion. So many of us in northern Nigeria are unbanked. We don't have bank accounts. We don't have access to banking applications. Because many of us are in rural areas, we don't have these institutions close by. But AI can help, especially smaller banks, microfinance institutions, assess who is better to uh, who is better placed to receive small loans or tailored loans for farmers, for traders, for teachers and startups looking for alternative data. I think even in security, um, AI can analyze patterns of insecurity and help with early warning systems to to protect communities. Um, For example, at the Obasanjo Space Center in Abuja, they're developing an AI model that can predict the movement um, of people in a particular geographical area. And it's been suggested that we could use that to track the movement of bandits or terrorists in a particular forest area, because the AI will be able to detect exactly how frequently they're moving, in which direction, and what the pattern is of that movement at any given point. So it has lots of applications for security. And then, of course, for government and social services. There's so many people. We have a very large population of, I think, 101 million people within northern Nigeria. And unfortunately, because we don't have a lot of digital infrastructure, a lot of the things that we do in government circles, in our universities, in hospitals, is on paper. But if we can find a way using AI to create chatbots and AI driven solutions so that citizens are able to report problems. Let's say, for example, there isn't water in one area, and instead of you to have to get up and go to the local water board office to talk to an officer, or maybe you have to make a phone call and then you're waiting on that phone call for somebody to attend to you. An AI chatbot is something that you can simply type to or maybe even talk to. It will log in your problem and immediately send it to the system. And then the system will either log your complaint and there'll be somebody there to deal with it. Or if it's something that can be dealt with by the machine itself, it can do so immediately. So there would be no need for people to have to wait for such a long time or have to depend on one or two individuals to get the problem solved. Um, these are for future problems, of course. I think all of them are things that uh, we currently face. Poor crop yields, illiteracy, healthcare shortage, financial exclusion, security threats, even urban planning challenges. These are things that we currently deal with in northern Nigeria on a consistent basis. If we're able to use AI properly and invest in it the way that other people and other communities around the world have been able to, then these problems can be solved in as short a time as possible. Mm. Sorry, I didn't get the last part of the question. Oh, okay. Okay, so you're right. To a large extent, Arewa is really feeling the heat from climate change, droughts, floods, desertification, very unpredictable farming seasons. Like I said, there are several ways in which AI can help with these issues. I think I mentioned one or two of them before. When it comes to floods and droughts, for example, you can use AI to create early warning systems that analyze satellite images, weather data, and river levels in real time to predict floods or droughts before they happen. I'll give you an example of. Um, I'll give you an example. I went to school. I did my undergraduate in Malaysia, and they have every year what is known as the monsoon season. The monsoon season is a very heavy rain period that usually exists in Southeast Asian countries. Um, for about 4 to 6 months, depending on which country it is, they're going to have very, very heavy rain that is nonstop. I do remember being in Malaysia and the rain not stopping for a total of 2 weeks. The rain will just fall. If it stopped for a few hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours. And then when it fell, it was very, very heavy. What this means is there's constant danger of flooding. There is constant danger of water overflowing in several cities and several villages across the nation. But because they're used to it and because they've created um, systems that take into consideration these things, um, there was an effort in the university that I was with at that time, one of the labs, to create an AI system that, using publicly available data, because they just use images from Google satellites. mm, Using images from Google satellites, they were able to see how much water was in the dams of around the city. Uh, the city was called, what's the name of this? Bangi. Bangi. How much water was in the dams at Bangi at that particular time? And how quickly was it raising over a period of time? So if, for example, the images show that over 10 hours, you're getting 2 centimeters or 3 centimeters of rain that's increasing. That means that in as much as 15 hours, the dam isn't going to be able to hold the rain anymore and it's going to overflow. So the system will then automatically send SMS alerts to everybody in the community. And you see, the government already has access to everybody's phone number and information. So everybody automatically gets that SMS alert. Along with the SMS alert, there's an evacuation plan and a water conservation plan. So once you get the SMS alert, it's going to come with an email. In that email, it will show you the directions to where you're going to go. If you're in the north part of the city, for example, there's already a shelter in the northern part, and it will show you directions on where to go. If you're in the southern part of the city, maybe there isn't a shelter, but there's a particular place that is high enough that the water won't reach. It's already predicted where that place is. It will direct people to that location. So I'm just giving you an example of how they were able to use AI to solve a problem that is constantly happening for them. Now imagine if we had that same system in Maiduguri just a couple of months ago, when the flood happened in the city. The AI system would have been able to predict weeks ago, weeks before the flood happened, it would have been able to send warnings that, wait, this dam is about to overflow. Structurally, this dam has an issue. If it rains to a certain degree at this particular day or this particular time, the dam will overflow and the city will be in danger. It will send SMS alerts. It will gather location data to know exactly where it is that the water won't reach so that people are in less danger. It can have a lot of useful information that both citizens and government would be able to use to get out of a situation like that. So that's just one example of how AI can be leveraged in that sense. I think I already mentioned smart agriculture, where um, AI can suggest, drought-resistant crops or smarter planting schedules, or even create an irrigation plan for a farmer based on the kind of weather of that particular area. And then I think in the area of um, reforestation, or I think they call it anti-desertification, is that an AI model can track where forests are disappearing fastest and suggest the best places for tree planting. Um, in Kano, for example, one of the issues that the city is facing is that it is getting significantly more hotter than it used to be um, over the last 30 years. And the reason for that is actually very simple. There are much fewer trees. There are much fewer trees in the city. They've actually been cut down. And so the less vegetation there is, obviously the less condensation there's going to be, which means obviously the less rainfall that there's going to be. So an easy way to be able to solve this sort of issue is to plant more trees, plant more vegetation. But because of the construction that has been going on in Kano City for the past several years, um, how do you know what places are best to be able to plant these trees? Which are the best locations? Which locations can you plant where the vegetation either won't be disturbed or where it will grow quickly? AI, with the correct data, with the correct imagery, with the correct information, can predict all of this information for you and make it much easier to plant these trees and fight against deforestation. Another thing that it can be helpful with is green energy planning. Um, Basically, that is, it can optimize the best place to place solar panels or mini grids based on the pattern of sunlight and based on the population needs of that particular area. I'll use Kano again. No, let me use a different place. Let's talk about Kaduna. If I were going to place solar panels in Ungwarimi in Kaduna, um, I wouldn't get a lot of sunlight. Although I would have a lot of customers that would be able to pay, the amount of sunlight that I would get in that region is much less than I would be receiving if I placed it somewhere in Doka, Doka local government in Kaduna. Because there's a lot of open area, it's an open plain. If I were to place it there and then just find a way to transfer that energy all the way to Ungwarimi, I would get a higher energy yield. And AI is going to be able to predict something like that for you. If you were to plan it yourself, you might not get the best yield because you can't see the sunlight pattern. You don't have the mathematical model that tells you that over a certain period of time, sunlight is going to fall here or fall over there in larger amounts. But an AI is going to be able to predict that and therefore give you the best places to be able to support a power grid, um, and therefore support the population needs of that particular area. I'm sure there are other examples, but I'm just giving you a couple of things that can be sample projects, shall we say, that can be used to help with climate change. In Kenya, they have a AI system called Plant Village Nuru. And what it does, it helps farmers deal with um, outbreaks, climate-driven outbreaks like locusts. It can predict the locust swarm, which direction it's moving, and when it's going to be coming. And so that means that you don't need to use pesticides, which can actually also damage other crops or damage the soil, because the AI model is able to predict when these particular swarms are coming or when these particular insects are going to be swarming to a particular location. And so you make a plan for that instead. Something very similar could very easily work in Kano or Sokoto or Plateau to protect crops from climate shocks such as this. And so I think, just like you mentioned, northern Nigeria is in very dire need of a plan, a national, or should I say, regional strategy on how to combat climate change. And in the modern world, I think it would be very wise to use AI models to be able to solve some of these issues. A very relevant question, Kam. So a deep fake, let's see, a deep fake is a type of video, or it could even be an audio that has been artificially created or artificially changed using AI to make it look or sound real, even though it's not. Mm. For example, you can take my face and plant it on somebody else's body, and use my voice on that video to make it seem like I said something that I never actually did, to make it seem like I was in a place that I've never actually been to. It can mimic voices down to even the type of speech pattern and tone that you're using. In fact, it can create entirely fake people who don't exist. Basically, um, a, a deep fake is a tool, if either a video or an audio tool that can make it seem like anyone did or said anything, even if they didn't. You can create a video of a politician making a speech, even though he never made or she never made that speech. You can make a recording of somebody confessing to something that they didn't do. You can make fake photos of a wedding that never took place. It's a very controversial technology that, unfortunately, because it has gotten a lot cheaper to produce, is becoming more popular with a lot of online communities. Hmm. Okay. So- Okay. So I think I have to preface this by saying that one of the issues that make it issue Arewa in northern Nigeria in general is a lack of digital literacy in general. Uh, and so I don't want to suggest very uh, specific programs or specific skills, because I feel like the majority of us in the region still need a certain level of digital literacy before we can proceed to those ones. But for the purpose of this, let's say the things that the programs or the skills that need to be learned for the modern age haven't changed really in the past 20 to 15 years. So in coding, if you can learn Python, even basic coding logic like Scratch, it helps you build critical thinking. And it's something that is useful across several uh, programming languages and several um, programming paradigms, regardless of which company or in which sector you're working in. AI and machine learning basics. Basically, understand what an AI is, what it can do, what it cannot do. Tools like ChatGPT, like DeepMind. What is an image generation? Yes, what is image generation? What is basic automation? These are things you should know. It's also important to know how AI works. It's a little bit complicated, but it's something that even if you don't become an expert, there are some things that you need to know. I'll give you a small example. Um, Most AI uses English or French. These days, it uses a little bit of Mandarin Chinese. But most AI models are built around the use of English. There's actually a reason for that, besides just um, the tool being a creation of Western intellectuals. The reason is that African languages are very complicated for an AI machine to understand. Mm. Um, I'll just give a small example, Yanzu. Uh, Something that we do in Hausa, something that we quickly do in Hausa, is that we do something called code switching, which means that we move from one language to another very quickly, or we mix English and Arabic and Hausa in one sentence while we're speaking. So, Yanzu, for example, well, I just did it. Let's say Yanzu, for example. If I were to put that in an AI model, it would automatically be confused. because what it does is the first thing that it does is it separates the words one by one. So neche yanzu, it will separate yanzu, and it will separate for, and it will separate example. And then it will try to define all of those words. But yanzu hausani, and then for an example turanchini. And so now it's confused as to how it will move forward because it doesn't have a definition for yanzu, right? So this is the case with a lot of African languages. I just gave one example. There are several other examples, but this is a case for a lot of African languages. Now, the problem with this is that if it turns out that African languages are not used in the creation of AI models, that means that information that is useful to us, or even the survival of our languages, uh, comes into danger. Because if you don't have a African languages inside AI models, and what you're saying is that AI models is how we're going to be able to um, do work in the future, it means that you're leaving the entirety of the African continent behind. So it's important for us to learn how AI works, learn how the machines predict language, predict speech patterns, and then see how it is that we can find ways to create AI models that are African, that are local to us. Um, Other than AI, machine learning, cybersecurity, of course. Cybersecurity is a very, very big industry now. Knowing how to protect information and recognize scams is a must. It's simply a must in the online environment. And if you're a cybersecurity expert, I guarantee you, you can be one of the most well paid um, experts in any field anywhere, because the way that every sector is being digitized, there isn't any sector in the world right now that isn't going to require at some point a cybersecurity expert. So the more you know about cybersecurity, the more of an expert you are, and the more certifications you have, the more secure your employment future is. Something about cybersecurity as well. I think it's important that people are afraid of it because they think it's a complicated subject. The truth is, cybersecurity, you don't even need a IT degree to become a cybersecurity expert. You need to be creative. You need to understand how the system works, and you need to be able to practice. That's really it. But the vast majority of cybersecurity experts today, they have certifications from different industries and not degrees. And yet they're some of the most sought after individuals in the world. So it's something that we should focus on. Digital creativity, of course, skills like graphic design, video editing, even though most of these things use AI these days, but they're still useful things that anyone can easily learn and can easily bring about employment opportunities. Um, Critical thinking, problem solving, emotional intelligence, creativity, adaptability, all of these things are human skills that AI cannot replace very easily. So they will be very sought after in the coming years. As a bonus, anybody that has communication skills or entrepreneurship skills will always be ahead of the pack. So that's something that everyone should take the time to focus on. So I'm thinking about it. Um, I'll be honest, yes. In some ways, AI can be a dangerous technology. And uh, I don't think that AI is a problem by itself, but how human beings use AI can be a big problem. Um, for example, like you mentioned, the issue of job displacement. You know, AI will likely automate many jobs, especially if it's a routine job like driving or customer service or cashiers, which means a lot of people could be left unemployed if people don't adapt. But that in itself is not an issue. The issue is, are people going to be willing to increase their skill sets? Because technology always causes displacement. I'll give you a very simple example. In 1918, uh, in New York, in 1918, everybody used horses in the city to get around. So everywhere you went, there was there was a stable so that people could keep their horses. Outside of people's houses, there was always a stable hand who would take care of or feed your horse if you came from a different place. To get around the city, um, it's either using a horse or a horse carriage, or maybe a bull to move cargo around. That was in the year 1918. By the year 1923, they had created the first automobile, and it had started being sold in the city. Within 2.5 years, there were no more horses in New York City. Not a single. In fact, it became illegal for you to have a horse in the city within 2 years. Everybody had switched over to having cars. What does that mean? It means that all the stable hands that used to take care of horses no longer had a job. It means that the people who used to wash horses, the people who used to buy the farmers from who you would buy their feed, didn't have that income anymore. So many people suddenly didn't have that income because of the coming of the automobile. Are we saying that they shouldn't have created the automobile? Didn't it make things a lot easier for people? And when the automobile came, didn't it come with its own jobs? That means that now roads had to be created and somebody was going to lay those roads. That means that there was now jobs for mechanics. It means that there were now jobs for painters. It means that there was now a fuel economy because you needed fuel for those cars. So there was jobs for those people. So in every technology displacement, some people will lose jobs, but others are going to gain them because there's going to be a new industry that is created. So the issue is not the people who lost their job, even the people who lost their jobs. How do we ensure that they upskill themselves so that they can be part of the new jobs that are created? So I think that's how you need to look at job displacement. Yes, AI might displace some jobs, but it also can create new types of jobs that we haven't even imagined yet. The one that I think is very true, that bothers me a lot, is the threat to human creativity. Because AI can now write music, it can paint pictures, it can generate, I'm very sure it will be able to generate full length movies very soon. Um, and that means a lot of people fear that it can replace human artists or human writers or designers. Um, I think the only way around this is that you have to get smart and use AI as a tool to become even more creative. Use it to assist you in becoming competitive rather than thinking of AI itself as a competitor. Because the truth is, it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. In fact, it's going to get larger and it's going to become more uh, more widely used as time goes by. So if you think of it as an issue that is you're going to compete against, you can't compete against it because it's too large of a of a system. for you to be able to do the kind of work that an AI system can do in 10 minutes probably might take you 2 days to 2 weeks, depending on the work. You can't replace that kind of labor. So rather than thinking of it as competition, the question is, how do I learn about AI and use it to my advantage? That's the only way to get over the threat of creativity. Definitely, when it comes to war and weaponization, AI is a very, very, very big threat. It's a serious risk. Um, that one is above my pay grade. You have to talk to your senators and your reps and write to your president about the threat of AI in modern warfare and in security challenges, because it's a very, very big risk, let me tell you. We just have to be aware of it. Another risk, I think, I'm not sure you mentioned it, but it's a very serious risk, is bias and inequality and the spread of misinformation. Because AI models, it's why I was mentioning earlier that we need to be able to create our own AI models in Africa. Because right now, the data that is being given to AI models to use is created by people from the West. And that means whatever information that they give is the information that the system or the algorithm is going to use to generate its information. That data might be biased. That data might be wrong. If you go onto ChatGPT right now and you ask ChatGPT, you say, does does Israel have the right to exist? It will say yes, of course. It obviously has the right to exist. If you ask it the same question, say, does Palestine have the right to exist? It will now give you a very long, complicated answer about maybe there are issues, it's very complicated. Why is that? Is because the people who designed the data or the data that is publicly available is in favor of one over the other. So therefore, it's very important to be able to have our own data sets so that this bias can also be addressed. It's also important because we mentioned earlier about deep fakes, and fake news is a very big thing in our world today. Um, so it's enough of a threat that AI-driven propaganda can very, very easily mislead people and tell them something that isn't true and have them believe it, and then be making decisions based on very false information. And so this is something that also needs to be addressed. It's also a very big danger when it comes to AI. Um, Thankfully, I think it's something that people already recognize, and there are a lot of tools, there are a lot of organizations that are battling this sort of misinformation and inequality. But yes, AI, while it can be dangerous, um, it is it is about how you use it. It's about how people use it, not necessarily the technology itself. Hmm. Okay. I think the most obvious one is that everything is going to be personalized. Your education is going to be such that you're not even using teachers anymore, you're using AI tutors uh, that teach people exactly how they learn best. So if you're an audiovisual learner or a didactic learner, um, the AI will create a lesson plan or teach based on um, the way that you're able the way that you're best able to learn. So it's going to be personalized to the individual rather than a broad um, curriculum for everybody. I think the same thing can happen in healthcare, where you have personalized treatment plans, where the AI can even predict diseases before you feel sick based on symptoms that you're showing. Maybe you're sweating more than usual. Maybe your skin has changed color. Maybe there's a patch in one place or other. And the AI model will be able to scan that and say, okay, this person is pre-diabetic based on the condition of your skin, for example. You know, even in things like shopping, I think e-commerce and online shopping is going to become the number one way that people shop, the number one way that people um, interact with retail. There are going to be new ways of working, new jobs that will be created, robot repairs, prompt engineers. Freelancing is going to become freelancing and remote work, sorry, are both going to become much more standard than they are now. But I also don't think people will just use AI, they will work with AI, which means that if you're a writer, um, rather than um, simply write the entire book yourself, you will write a certain part and then you will input what you wrote into the AI, and then the AI will help you expand upon what it is you've already written, and then you continue from there. So you're using it as a tool to further your work rather than uh, just using it to create the work in its entirety. Um, the possibility exists for better climate and healthcare solutions, better transport opportunities, but I also think those depend on where you're living. The first ones that I mentioned, that is, AR partnerships with AI, or new ways of work, or how everything will be personalized. I think that will easily happen for everybody, regardless of where you live in the world, as long as you have access to a digital ecosystem of some sort. You use phones, you use the internet, you use computers, then all of that applies to you. But when it comes to things like transport, when it comes to things like healthcare and climate tech, it depends on where you're living, because at the end of the day, um, two things are always true. Number one, all of these things depend on your particular context. The security challenges you have in Nigeria are not the same security challenges you have in Portugal. So obviously, AI will treat it differently. Um, Healthcare and transport require proper planning, management, and investment from government and private sector. And so AI itself cannot solve those problems. It can only be a tool with which to improve or make those problems more efficient. So until and unless governments, whether that's local or federal or state, really take those problems very seriously, AI cannot even be used to solve it efficiently or effectively. So it really depends on the issues. Big risks is widening inequality. Um, if only rich countries control AI, it leaves a lot of the rest of the world left behind. And even in a place like Nigeria, if you are more economically advantaged, it means you have access to AI tools. Those of us who don't have access to AI tools will not have the same opportunities that you have if you have that advantage. So inequality might become much more wide. Um, we talked about security because surveillance means that AI could take away more and more of your privacy. We can already see that's happening to a certain extent. Um, and then, of course, fake reality, deep fakes, AI generated news, fake videos, all of these things are going to become much more commonplace and therefore much more dangerous. But the big picture is, like I said, it depends on how human beings decide to use this technology. AI can either make the world better or far more complicated. It really depends on the choices that we make today.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, so it's not a question basically, but it's just that I hear we don't pay much attention to privacy. I feel like it's going- Can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right. So what I was saying is that what I'm asking is not a question, but it's just a bit of a concern about what AI has to do in terms of data privacy and security, right? Here in Africa or here in Nigeria, let's say, we don't pay much attention to our data privacy. And AI has like a big concern, or AI is a big concern when we look at using our data now in all these AI sites like DeepSeek, like ChatGPT, like Claude AI, and we don't really have much control over what these companies do with our data. Our government has not put in enough infrastructure to regulate this. So, as a question now, Mr. Faiz, how do you feel like our government can come in and help protect the citizens' data, especially as it regards AI, because it's quite a lot of data that we're giving out to them, and we don't know the privacy and security of this data. Thank you so much.
Yes, so that's true. Um, it's actually something that the government has, to be very fair to the government and to the current administration, it's something that they've been discussing. There is a national AI strategy, there is a digital economy strategy. And for the past year and a half at least, I know that the current minister has been um, very um, intentional about talking about both the opportunities and the risks of AI in terms of both the potential economic benefits and also the issues when it comes to data privacy. There also is a regulatory framework for data protection in Nigeria, the NDPRA. Nigerian Data Protection Regulatory Agency already has an act that regulates how data is collected, how it can be stored, when it can be deleted, who can use it, for how long it can be kept. All of these things are there. I think, like with all things in Nigeria, there are two issues. Number one is that, like you rightly pointed out, most of these, most of the data that is collected is being given away to foreign actors. And like you said, it cannot be predicted how they will be used specifically. But that is why I mentioned very early on that one of the things that we have to do in the near future is create our own language learning models, our own NLP, natural language processing, so that we're not dependent on foreign AI models and foreign chatbots to find solutions or to generate information for us. It is in itself, that's a very serious national security risk. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that.